Guys, I just wanted to give you an agenda for the week. We are going to do some vertical alignment and talk about equations and inequalities. Okay, when you are looking at vertical alignment just means it progresses from each grade level. So, for example, in 6th grade, you learned the basics, okay? For equations and inequalities, you learned how to solve one-step equations. Then in 6th grade, it got a little harder and you did two-step equations. 8th grade, it got a little harder and you did multi-step equations, two-step equations, some more. Okay, so let's look at what these looked like to give you a little bit of a refresher. In 6th grade, you just did the basic equation and inequalities. You solved y plus 14 equals 20. To do so, all you had to do was subtract the 14 and you got y is 6. Very simple. Did the same thing with inequalities. The only difference is you then had to graph the inequality. Remember, with the inequality, if it is a greater than or less than sign, your dot on your graph was a circle. It was not filled in. If it was greater than or equal to, then your dot was completely filled in on your graph. That was the only thing really that you had to remember, all right? Then we moved into 7th grade. You did the same thing. You now, instead of just doing one-step equations, you had two-step equations. You graphed it. When you did inequalities, just like you did before, again, greater than, less than, means that you had a hole. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, you had a complete dot, full circle. Okay? The only other thing we threw in 7th grade was the fact that when you divided right here, if that 2 had been a negative 2, then your greater than less than sign would have flipped, okay? Because that negative meant we had to flip it. In 8th grade then, we did more two-step equations. Your work was done exactly the same way. You drew your line, you got your final answer, etc. Then we created two-step inequalities. You were not required to solve them. You just created them from word problems, etc. Well, what happens when you move then into algebra, which is what we're doing, we're getting you ready for algebra, you're going to do the exact same thing, except if you look right here, there's a parenthesis. Well, that parenthesis means to distribute, and you're going to learn how to do that this week. So you will basically simplify to distribute and then solve your equation, okay? You will then work with inequalities, and you do it exactly the same way. You treat it just like you did if it had been a regular inequality. Get your problem. Again, right here, if this had been negative, excuse me, I did it on the wrong side, I apologize. This 8 here, if that 8 had been negative 8, then you're dividing by negative 8, so your sign would have switched places. That's the only thing different, okay? So again, vertical alignment is just the progression from 6th grade to algebra and beyond, okay? And it is just getting harder because, as we know, math builds on itself. Okay, so we are getting you ready for algebra. Let us know if you have any questions. Have an amazing week.